Silhouettes of people stood on the rocks in front of Ling Si. Ruko, Tillies, and Dark Feather stood inside a dark magic circle. Squirrel said that he believed that all people should have a clear understanding of their limits. He said that he only let him go last time because he didn't want to corner them all. Ling Si repeated his words about not wanting to corner them all. Squirrel, closing his eyes, said that it was true and their actions were easy to predict. He said there was no challenge in that. Squirrel said that Nebulous seemed to lack professional players since they decided to resort to using the likes of them. Exhaling, he said that he knew Nebulous was up to something, so he guessed they would attack the most unprotected border. Opening his eyes, he said he didn't expect to be right. A dagger appeared in his hand and he said he didn't want to spend too much time on such trivial things. Squirrel said he was giving them one chance to drop their equipment and escape. The guy with the beard took off his hood and said with a smirk that by doing so, they, Black Hunt, would spare their lives. Ling Si told them that they should know one thing. He said that they are not insulting him, but Shadow, Tillies, Ruko, and Dark Feather stood inside the magic circle with grim faces. Ling Si frowned and looked at Squirrel. Ruko told Ling Si that he would leave it to him to interrupt their mages. The mage on the rock behind Squirrel raised a staff shrouded in blue energy. The guy with the eye patch said he could talk big. The mage girl told Squirrel that she wasn't sure if he noticed, but this thief did manage to dodge contact-based rune prison. She told him through the dialogue box that it was a bit of an unexpected reaction speed. The mage said that as far as he knew, contact-based rune prison is a skill with a cast time length of a second, and he managed to leave the range of the skill despite that. Squirrel said with a calm face that it wasn't surprising. He said that they probably just missed a bit when they used the spell, or it could just be trivial luck. He added that it was also possible that he had prepared in advance. Squirrel said that he couldn't have such speed otherwise. He was surprised to notice that Ling Si had disappeared. The protagonist appeared behind the mage. Turning around, Squirrel ordered him to take a protective stance. He was surprised to think of Ling Si's speed. Grabbing the mage's arm, the guy with the beard blocked Ling Si's strike with his shield. The guy swung his dagger behind the protagonist's back. Pushing off the opponent's shield with his foot, Ling Si jumped to the side, dodging the dagger guy's strike. He said that he didn't expect anything less from the number 3 guild's elite team. Smirking, he said as they quickly regrouped into a defensive stance. Crouching on the rock above them, Ling Si said that they said that his speed was simple luck. Straightening up, he asked why don't they see if what happens next can be achieved by simple luck. Squirrel with a grim face asked if he was threatening him. Frowning, he said he was the underdog he had defeated earlier. Squirrel ordered him to be killed, and Black Hunt rushed into attack. The guy with the eye patch used Bird Tracer and asked how dare a simple thief from Nebulous act so cocky in front of them. Wolf's Fang. A dialogue box described Bird Tracer, thief exclusive skill. The user of this skill will speed up after locking onto their target. Their first subsequent attack will deal 3 times the damage. This skill lasts for 2 seconds. Shrouded in purple electricity, the guy rushed forward, hitting Ling Si with his dagger. The guy with the shield cursed and said that he got to him first. The guy with the eye patch grinned. Gritting his teeth, he noticed that Ling Si had turned into a purple evil spirit. Noticing that it was a clone, the guy wondered when he had done this. Ling Si jumped through the crowd of opponents towards Squirrel. Squirrel said that it seemed like he had really gotten stronger. He ordered him to block, and a guy with daggers appeared between them. They started exchanging blows. The guy with gray hair clenched his teeth and thought he couldn't believe the frequency of his attacks and the way he was blocking their blades. He thought he was being pushed back. The guy thought that he was deliberately not giving him time to use his skills. He thought about the fact that he should not forget that he had teammates to back him up. Behind Ling Si's back, a guy with a sword and a guy with a shield appeared. The guy with gray hair shouted at them to get this guy off him. One of the attackers used Crashing Sword Ripple. The other one used Sword Edge Shadow. Ling Si frowned and thought about the two of them attacking together, which was convenient. Ling Si was enveloped in purple energy. Using Rapid Shadow Thrust, he flew past the attackers. The mage shouted to them about being behind him. The guys turned around in surprise. Squirrel frowned in surprise, wondering if he had taken advantage of the 0.3 seconds of invulnerability from Rapid Shadow Thrust to avoid guided skills like Crashing Sword Ripple. A dialogue box reported that he had cancelled Rapid Shadow Thrust's follow-up damage. Ling Si smirked. Squirrel thought about the fact that he had done this at the same moment that Crashing Sword Ripple's follow-up damage was being dealt. He wondered if it was possible. Ling Si, flying between the opponents, hit the ground in front of Squirrel. Squirrel, humming, said that as expected, it was still a top-time micro-movement. Smirking, he told him to attack and show him if he had indeed gotten stronger. Squirrel called him a loser. Ling Si stood in front of him with daggers in his hands. Squirrel and Ling Si stood opposite each other. Squirrel, shrouded in dark energy, frowned and said that the result would be the same. Using the Shadow Snake technique, he rushed forward. Ling Si watched his approach in surprise. Striking with his dagger, Squirrel asked if his top time was only good for dodging, or if he was trying to tell him that was all he was capable of. The guy with the beard said with a smirk that he wasn't using any skills, and along with that, mimicking the way this thief exerted pressure on them. He said the squirrel is playing with him. The other guy said that this thief doesn't seem to be able to stand up to Squirrel at all, and he can only defend himself. Squirrel wondered if he was really too overwhelmed by his attacks to fight back. He thought that he was able to flawlessly dodge each of his attacks. Looking at Ling Si, he thought that this was what he expected from Top Time. Squirrel thought that these attacks were not enough for him to slip up. The protagonist grinned and thanked him for bringing him here. He said this was exactly where he wanted to go. Eyes widening in surprise, Squirrel thought that something was wrong and he had been too focused on him all this time. Ling Si was next to the mage. Squirrel thought that he had been leading him all this time. The mage called out to Squirrel. Ling Si was using Throat Slasher. Squirrel angrily shouted that he was playing with it. Ling Si struck with his dagger, and the mage blocked his attack with her staff. A dialogue box announced that casting had been interrupted. The protagonist smirked and said that if he hadn't, he wouldn't have relaxed enough to let him get close to them. The other mage shouted to Squirrel that she could not cast the spell on her own, and the prison was dissipating. Squirrel, shrouded in dark energy, swore. Ling Si grinned and apologized for not taking him seriously. Ruko, Tillies, and Dark Feather appeared next to him, and the main character said with a smirk that they could now. He told Shadow to repay them 1,000-fold. Squirrel, pointing his hand forward, ordered Black Hunt to kill them. The mage used Azure Flames of Destruction, pointing the blue flames forward. Ruko used Golden Shield, blocking the spell with his shield. The mage opened her mouth in surprise, and Tillies, who was nearby, noted that he was playing with fire. Tillies said that she would take her up on that. Frowning, she said to leave the mage to her. The shot hit the dagger. Dark Feather said he was interested in fighting thieves. Holding a golden pistol in his hand, he said to leave those two to him. Ruko smirked. Frowning, he found himself enveloped in purple energy. Magnifying himself, he shouted to leave the warriors to him. He swung his huge hand. Ling Si, smirking, said that everyone seemed to have chosen their targets. He asked to be allowed to settle the score with Squirrel. Squirrel stood in front of him. Ruko swung a huge arm. Behind him, Tillies was fighting the mage. Ruko hit the ground with force. Dark Feather was aiming with a pistol. The guy under the invisibility effect said he couldn't believe that an archer would send himself to be executed. He said he was being very presumptuous. He asked where the glass cannon archer got the courage to challenge them, the thieves, much less the two of them. The other guy whispered to him with a smirk, urging him to work cohesively and use the backstab on him at the same time. He said he was willing to bet they could kill him in one hit. They rushed behind Dark Feather's back. Dark Feather smirked. He fired his pistols. The shot hit the guy with the dagger. A dialogue box announced that his invisibility status had been revoked. Another shot hit the other thief with the dagger. The guy with gray hair frowned in surprise and asked how he had managed to spot them both at the same time. Dark Feather said it was a simple matter to defeat them. He said he doubted they knew it, but he thought the most important thing for an archer was good eyesight. His eye glowed yellow, and he used Starlit Goldeneye. A dialogue box described Starlit Goldeneye, Archer exclusive skill. Pupils are transformed into golden eyes, massively boosting the user's perceptiveness and observation for a short duration. No manner of disguise or invisibility can hide from these eyes. Duration, 60 seconds. Ling Si said, seeming like everyone was busy doing business. Squirrel stood in front of him, shrouded in black energy. Ling Si called out to Squirrel. Remembering the previous battle with him, he said that it was time for them to settle the score as well. Squirrel said with a smirk that he seemed to have made some progress. Ling Si stepped forward and said that it was probably more than he could imagine. Rushing forward to attack, he thought it was time for a showdown. Coco Lai asked Stillwaters if he thought Ling Si would be able to accomplish the task. Sitting at the table, she said that if their data was correct, his team would face serious opponents. Stillwaters said the name Squirrel thoughtfully. Coco Lai said that she didn't think he would put together his team, Black Hunt. She said that according to what they could figure out from their data, 6 members of the Black Hunt team were in the first division of the Wolf's Fang Guild. Stillwaters, standing next to the pink flowers, asked what was wrong with that. Coco Lai said that he had entrusted an extremely important step to Ling Si, and if his plan failed, it would directly affect the outcome of the entire operation. Frowning, she said that although Ling Si is promising, she is afraid that his opponent is very strong. Recalling Squirrel's face, Coco Lai said that to be honest, she is not sure if she can defeat him herself. She asked if he knew which dungeon Squirrel had been going through for the past few days. She said it was the Dark Crevasse of the Depths. Coco Lai said that there are rumors that you can get a very strong skill in this dungeon, and since the official instructions are vague, the specific details are unknown. She said that the chance of falling out is so low that no one has gotten this skill yet, but Squirrel has formed several teams to go through this dungeon over 100 times. She said she didn't know if he was able to get it. Stillwaters repeated the name of the dungeon with a smile. He said that it would be an even bigger challenge for Ling Si. Coco Lai frowned and said with a cluck of her tongue that he makes her look stupid for being worried. She said she doesn't understand why he has so much confidence in him. Stillwaters asked if she remembered what he said to her when he invited her to Nebulous. Coco Lai was silent for a moment. Stillwaters looked out the window with a smile. Coco Lai, relaxing her eyebrows, replied that she remembered. She asked how she could forget such shocking words. She remembered Stillwaters asking her if she would help him find a truly capable leader with the power to surpass that man. Coco Lai said that he said about a leader with the power to surpass that man. Covering her eyes, she said that at first, she thought it was empty words because that person was the head of the #1 guild, Divine Chamber, Kaiser Storm Mountain. Coco Lai, closing her eyes, said that she didn't know what spell he used on her back then since she just agreed. She exhaled. Stillwaters said that he was never a person throwing around empty words. He said she should know what he was like from childhood. Coco Lai, embarrassed, said she wasn't his very close childhood friend or anything like that. Stillwaters said he didn't say that. He said she hasn't changed at all. Laughing, he said she keeps getting so worked up every time he talks about their childhood. Turning around, he said he has always sought the so-called view from the top, but he realizes he lacks the ability to achieve it on his own. Stillwaters said with a smile that he will never be Storm Mountain's equal, whether in Heavenland or in real life, he has always been better than him since they were kids. Coco Lai said that she didn't think so. Stillwaters said that Storm Mountain managed to make Divine Chamber the #1 guild in the game, and there is no better proof of that than that fact. He said that in the beginning he tried his best in hopes of one day surpassing it. Taking off his glasses, he said that, after a while, he changed his mind. Looking ahead, he said that if he couldn't surpass him himself, he could just use his abilities to find someone who was capable of doing so. Stillwaters said that if he could find an even more capable leader, then he could lead him to the view from the top. Frowning, he said that he might even be able to lead him above that. Coco Lai, raising an eyebrow, asked if he wanted to say that Ling Si was the one he was looking for. Putting on his glasses, Stillwaters said he wasn't sure about it himself. He said he has seen videos of Ling Si and his team in battle on the forum, and he may not be the best in terms of skills, but he senses that possibility from the look on his face. He said that this facial expression is not something you can see on a normal person. Coco Lai asked what look he is talking about. Stillwaters said, an undying will. Ling Si on the screen stood with a serious frown on his face. The main character ran to attack Squirrel. They began to exchange dagger strikes. Squirrel said that fighting a person who had mastered top time was very rare. Smirking, he said that this opportunity is even rarer if that person is of the same class. He said that it was interesting. A dark energy struck Ling Si. Frowning, the squirrel said that he had a pretty good idea. Using rapid comprehension, he pierced a copy of Ling Si and said that he had already noticed his evil spirit's invisibility. Ling Si thought in surprise that he had managed to read his movements. The squirrel told him that he wasn't the only one with evil spirit's invisibility. A black and green evil spirit appeared in front of the protagonist. Turning around, Ling Si thought to himself from behind. Squirrel struck with his dagger, and Ling Si blocked its strike. Smirking, Squirrel said that he blocked his strike and he wasn't bad. Using bullet velocity, Squirrel pushed the main character back. A dialogue box described bullet velocity, a skill usable by all classes. A basic attack launched at the traveling speed of a bullet. It may be a basic attack familiar to everyone, but it can still serve to turn the tide at a critical moment. The protagonist gritted his teeth and thought that, as expected of a vice guildmaster of Wolf's Fang, his top time had gotten noticeably better. Squirrel said that it looked like it would end the same way as last time. He told Ling Si that he thought he could think of something that would surprise him in all the time that had passed. Smirking, he said that he still had a hard time landing a killing blow on someone with top time. Squirrel said to get it over with quickly. The object in his hand was shrouded in a red aura. He attached a small skull to the hilt of his dagger and said that he would show him the treasure he obtained in the dark crevasse of the depths dungeon. Ling Si, frowning, wondered if it could be that skill. The squirrel, shrouded in a red aura, used the brilliance of gazing into the crevasse and said that killing him with this technique was his gift to Ling Si. At the foot of the cliff, the battles continued. Darkfeather was shooting at the two thieves with his pistols. Noticing something, he turned around. Behind a cloud of dust, he saw two huge red hands. Tilly's asked what it was. A large red eye appeared on the squirrel's forehead. Ruko turned around and frowned, thinking he had a bad feeling from that light. The guy exclaimed that it was the brilliance of gazing into the crevasse of their boss. The guy with the beard replied that he knew Squirrel used that skill. He said it was an honor to see him in action. Squirrel stood in a fighting stance, shrouded in a red aura. The eye on his forehead was glowing red, and two huge red hands were sticking out from behind his back. The dialogue box described the brilliance of gazing into the crevasse, warrior and thief exclusive skill, a power that stems from the darkness of the crevasse. The eyes of Asura will grant you a greater range of vision, enhancing your agility and perception. The unsettling power of darkness will shape your hands and aid you in battle, doubling all damage dealt. The insolent power of darkness has existed since time immemorial, and it is said that all who seek to grasp it will eventually be left crippled by fear. Dark Feather, frowning, thought that this looked bad for Ling Si. He thought that if he lost the duel against the squirrel, it would be over. The guy with gray hair said that it looked like Squirrel wanted to end it quickly. The guy with the eye patch said that they can't embarrass him and they should end it soon too. Dark Feather replied that that assumes they are capable of doing that. With a wave of his pistol, he did a somersault and, using Silver Blossom Rainstorm, began to rain bullets down on his opponents. The guy with gray hair gritted his teeth and used Bladed Shield and told the other guy to get behind him. Dark Feather changed his weapon to a sniper rifle. Looking through the telescopic sight, he said he would get through that shield. He noticed one of the opponents approaching him from the side. The thief swung his dagger, and Dark Feather blocked the blow with his rifle. Smirking, the guy with the eye patch said he blocked his blow with his sniper rifle. He said he was doing pretty good for an archer. He said next time he wouldn't get away with just a scratch on his face. Dark Feather frowned with a cut on his cheek. The mage in the white magic hat directed a stream of purple electricity at Tilly's and said that they really overestimated themselves. With a smirk, she said that a girl fighting mage was ridiculous. Tilly said with a smirk that it looks like this is working out. Standing up straight with her staff in her hand, she said that she hadn't been this interested since she fought Ling Si. Smirking, she added that they were just trash who relied on their numerical superiority to attack her with the two of them. She asked what right they had to say that. The mage with purple hair got angry and asked how dare she. The other mage said they wouldn't let her get away with it. Smiling, Tilly's told them to memorize every word they said. She split her staff into two pieces. She used mana materialization, form of fist, and a pink energy appeared over her hand. Tilly stood in a fighting stance, spreading her arms out to the side, enveloped in pink flames. Clenching her fists, she said, making them pay for her words. A jolt of yellow energy raised a huge cloud of dust above the ground. The guy with the shield ordered to defend himself. In front of them stood a huge Ruko surrounded by golden writing, and the guy asked what it was. He asked if it was an illusionary skill. Why did it last so long? The guy asked, with such physique and explosive power, is there anyone besides those deviants in their guild who can even scratch it? The guy with the pointy ears frowned and said that it wasn't like an illusionary skill and he had never seen anything like it. He added that his strength was terrifying as well. Ruko said with a smirk that it was embarrassing. He asked if this was all that the warriors in the first division of Wolf's Fang Guild were capable of. He added that he thought he had something to look forward to. The guy pointed his finger at him and angrily shouted that he was only babbling because he had such physique and strength. He shouted that he had simply never met a deviant from their guild and he would be unrecognizable after they were done with him. He demanded that he fight them without transforming. Ruko replied that he was not stupid. He asked why he would shrink for the sake of fighting them. Swinging his arm, he struck the ground with force and asked if they thought he had extra time. Stones shrouded in yellow energy began to rise above the ground. Ruko said that since they couldn't satisfy his craving for a good fight, he would just finish with them and go help his teammates. The rocks in front of him gathered into a pile, shrouded in yellow energy. The squirrel with 3 red eyes said that he had to admit that he had found some pretty interesting teammates. Ling Si agreed and said that they had exceeded his expectations. Pressing a button in the game interface, he suggested that he take care of himself first. Squirrel said with a smirk that there was no need for that because he was sure that his alone was more than enough to defeat the 4 of them. Throwing himself into the attack, he said that this fight would end just like last time. A mage sigil appeared on Ling Si's forehead, and he said that he would try it out on him. Squirrel wondered what it was. Shrouded in yellow energy and purple electricity, Ling Si said that this was his grand debut as a spell thief. Tiana, putting her clipboard of papers forward, ordered to hold formation. She ordered the 6th division to move forward. Gritting her teeth, she saw the dialogue box. The dialogue box announced that she had received a message from a friend. Ling Si had written her a message saying that it was time to move. Tiana smiled and thought that his plan had finally worked. Pointing her hand forward, she ordered everyone to listen. Tiana ordered them to retreat from the battlefield and go with her to attack the Wolf's Fang Station checkpoint. A stream of yellow energy rushed into the sky between the rocks. Ling Si stood with 2 daggers in his hands, shrouded in purple electricity. A mage sigil could be seen on his forehead. It was glowing with yellow energy. The Wolf's Fang guy asked if this guy had some kind of skill that improved his attributes like Squirrel. Dark Feather thought with a smirk, wondering what trump card he had that they didn't know about. Tiana said with a smile that she had a good feeling about it. Ruko said with a smirk that it looks like Ling Si is finally getting serious. Ling Si, standing in front of Squirrel with huge red hands, said that he has waited too long for this day. Squirrel looked at him in surprise, frowning. The protagonist found himself behind his opponent's back. He struck with his dagger and Squirrel, blocking the blow, exclaimed that it was insolent. He mockingly apologized with his 4 hands. Squirrel struck the protagonist with his red hand, and blue energy appeared under Ling Si's feet. The red hand struck the spectral warrior that appeared. Squirrel wondered what it was. A dialogue box reported that he had used the Dominion of the Mercenary skill. Ling Si, surrounded by spectral warriors, apologized and said that it meant he had 8 hands to fight. Squirrel, smiling evilly, asked about the summoning skill. Swinging in for an attack, he said he didn't know anything about the mechanics of his summoning skill, but if that was his limit, it wasn't even worth looking at. Using Leap of Thorns, he started firing numerous red projectiles. Ling Si ran forward, dodging them. He swung his dagger, and Squirrel, blocking his strike, asked if he still intended to try to compete with him in speed. Their faces drew closer together. The impact raised a huge cloud of dust. Ling Si ordered the spectral warriors to attack, and they rushed forward. The 3 spectral warriors began to strike the Squirrel at the same time, and he blocked them by clenching his teeth. The main character used Throat Slasher. Staring at him with his third eye, Squirrel used Piercing Edge. Ling Si hit Squirrel with a stream of blue energy, and he blocked it with a sweep of his huge red hand. Squirrel grinned and asked if he was trying to find an opening by making his summons attack him. He said it wouldn't work on him. Ling Si, frowning, thought to go find the best moment. They turned around, noticing a huge explosion of yellow energy. The huge Ruko stood with a huge shield made of stones, shrouded in yellow electricity. Smirking, he thought that this was what he expected from the Wolf's Fang Guild's 1st Division, and any other tank would have fallen long ago when faced with their coordinated attack. Hitting the ground, he said that it ends here. The guy with the pointy ears asked the guy with the huge sword if he was okay. He replied that the size and strength of the thing was incredible and he was fine. The guy replied that he had the same thing, that his skill consumption was too high. Skill vacuum, a period of time when all of the player's skills have been used and are on cooldown. It is an extremely dangerous state to be in as opponents can take advantage of this vulnerability easily. The boy opened his eyes in surprise. He saw many huge stones flying towards them. The stream of rocks knocked them down, throwing them backwards. The guy with the pointy ears, covered in wounds, told the other to hold on. Ruko swung his huge arms. A huge cloud of dust rose above the ground from the impact. The mage asked the purple-haired mage to help her stall, but she didn't finish her sentence. The purple-haired mage looked to the side in surprise. She saw Tilly swinging her fist shrouded in a pink aura. She used Blazing Rainbow Fist, breaking the ground with the blows of her fist shrouded in flames. The purple-haired mage shouted that she couldn't hold her off because she was too fast. The other replied that without cover, they had no way to deal damage. Tilly said with a smirk that while a battle mage's skills do less damage than other mages, their agility is something the likes of them could never achieve. With a frown, he said that she would now make them shiver in fear every time they encountered a battle mage in the future. A pillar of fire rose above the ground and the mages shouted loudly. Darkfeather stood in a cloud of dust, pointing his pistol forward. The boy wondered why it felt like his bullets had eyes. The shots hit him and the guy with gray hair in the shoulders. Darkfeather said with a smirk that like he said, he had very good eyesight. The guys shouted, and Darkfeather said, GG. The guy holding his palm out back shouted for everyone to look. The guy behind him asked why the nebulous people suddenly seemed to go crazy. The guy with the bow asked why they were running away. The guy with dark hair grinned and said they were probably too scared of them. The guy with the bow said uncertainly about the direction they were heading. The smile fell off the dark-haired guy's face, and he looked forward. He exclaimed in surprise that they were coming out of the dungeon. A voice from the dialogue box asked him what the situation was in the dungeon, and if the nebulous were going to come back to attack their checkpoint station. Looking at Tiana in a cloud of dust, the guy ordered the Squirrel to report it. Ling Si stands in front of Squirrel, shrouded in red energy. Frowning, the protagonist thought that Tiana has started to move. On the dialogue box in front of Squirrel was a message that the nebulous people had split up, pretending to retreat, but they had actually left the dungeon to attack their checkpoint station. Squirrel said with a smirk that they didn't seem to be as docile as he expected. He said they backed off to regain the initiative and catch them off guard. Frowning, he said that they would still see if Nebulous was capable of that. Ling Si, surrounded by spectral warriors, said that he was right and this was a race against time and an operation to seize the initiative from the start. Frowning, he thought that he couldn't waste any more time here with him. The guy with the big sword told everyone to quickly approach him, and Black Hunt gathered in one place. Ruko said he was sorry he could kill them with one shot. Ruko, Tillies, and Darkfeather stood in front of them. Ruko asked if they were now trying to attack him in a mob. The guy looked around and asked if all 6 of them had lost to their opponents. The green-haired mage yelled that he didn't expect all 3 of them to be that strong, and they wouldn't be able to defeat them with their current abilities. Ryuko and Tillies looked at them with a smirk. The guy with the eye patch told them, frowning, that although they weren't the best elites from the first division, they had Squirrel with them. Smirking, he said that Squirrel can't lose, and they have no idea how strong Squirrel is. The guy said he's on a whole other level from them. Tillies told them that they didn't seem to beat them enough and their breath still stinks. The guy grinned and agreed that they had indeed lost and there was no point in continuing their fight. He said that it was up to the 2 of them now. Ling Si ordered the spectral warriors to attack. Squirrel ran forward and said that he would get rid of those 3 annoying things first. He ran forward beside his 2 red clones towards the 3 spectral warriors using pseudo flower. The dialogue box described pseudo flower allows the user to create a clone that will last for 1 minute. The clone will also be able to deal damage and apply status effects, but will immediately disappear upon taking damage. The squirrel clones pierced 2 spectral warriors. The squirrel with a dagger in his hand said that they were mindless summons. Ling Si moved behind Squirrel's back with a quick movement. With a sweep of his daggers, he killed 2 of Squirrel's clones. Squirrel said that it seemed that he too preferred to fight one-on-one. Frowning, he thought that his speed just now was incredible. Looking at Ling Si's back, he thought that even his third eye couldn't see his movements. The guy with the eye patch clenched his fist and shouted to his boss to finish him off and show the difference between them. Ling Si, frowning, thought that stacked attacks wouldn't work on him because he would definitely interrupt him with his attack. He thought that if he wanted to pull off his next move, he had no choice but to pit his body movements against his. The protagonist thought that he would use his body movements to create a gap. Ling Si pushed himself off the ground, and Squirrel, frowning, told him to attack. The protagonist used Kiss of the Vile Serpent, and a huge purple serpent appeared behind him. Ling Si was enveloped in purple energy, and the mage sigil on his forehead glowed with yellow energy. A dialogue box described Kiss of the Vile Serpent, mage exclusive skill. This skill locks onto one target. The soul of the Vile Serpent wraps around the opponent and deals magic damage. After a target is selected, your physical attacks will accumulate vile flames continuously. When the Vile Flames effect is activated, the ground will rise along with the Kiss of the Dragonic Serpent, dealing burst magic damage based on attack power multiplied by 150% to the target and the surrounding area. Squirrel wondered what kind of skill this was. He swung a huge red hand. Ling Si dodged it by jumping between the red hands. The mage sigil on his forehead glowed yellow. Squirrel, frowning, thought in surprise at the fact that he was not keeping up with his top time. The protagonist frowned and thought he detected a gap. Purple energy approached the squirrel. Huge red arms above his head struck each other and a purple kite flew next to him. As it flew next to him, it tore the clothes on Squirrel's side. Squirrel was surprised to think that he had managed to use top speed to make the hands behind him bug out from high FPS lag. He wondered if it was possible. Ling Si behind him told him that he had already told him that he had come here to settle accounts. Behind him was a huge purple serpent. The protagonist asked if he was ready to be poisonously kissed by the evil python. A pillar of purple energy rushed upwards. Ling Si, running up to Squirrel, told him that his rhythm was in a mess. Squirrel ordered himself to calm down, thinking that he couldn't let it throw off his rhythm. Looking at Ling Si, he thought that he would attack from the left. Ling Si hit him with his dagger from the right. Gritting his teeth, Squirrel wondered if his judgment was wrong. Ling Si said that he had no time left to recover his rhythm. He said he would give him that kick back. The people from Black Hunt called out Squirrel in surprise. Dark Feather said that Squirrel was now in full panic mode. Looking at their battle, he said that with such lightning-fast attacks, it would be hard for him to focus after he panicked. Squirrel thought that he would attack his lower abdomen and he would block the strike and then counterattack. Ling Si, approaching him, told him that he was wrong. Gritting his teeth, Squirrel thought that he had predicted his prediction. Kicking his opponent with his foot, Ling Si, shrouded in purple energy, told him that his top time was better than his. Blood rushed out of Squirrel's mouth and he thought why his top time was better than his. The guy with the big sword shouted to him that they were coming to help him. Squirrel yelled for them to leave because he didn't need anyone's help. Ling Si asked if he really didn't need help. From the impact, Squirrel flew off to the side. Ling Si stood with his knee up, and the Black Hunt men ran up to Squirrel worriedly. The guy with the shield asked if he was okay. The guy with the eye patch ordered the mages to treat him. Looking at the black fire on his arm, Squirrel thought that it hadn't dissipated. Ling Si smirked, and shrouded in purple energy, he waved his hand and said, "Vile flames." Snapping his fingers, he said, "Burst." Squirrel tensely said, "Too late." A huge dark purple serpent appeared above them. A dialogue box described Kiss of the Vile Serpent, mage exclusive skill. This skill locks onto one target. The soul of the Vile Serpent wraps around the opponent and deals magic damage. After a target is selected, your physical attacks will accumulate vile flames continuously. When the Vile Flames effect is activated, the ground will rise along with the kiss of the dragonic serpent, dealing burst magic damage based on attack power multiplied by 150% to the target and the surrounding area. Black flames enveloped the squirrel, dealing AoE damage. Shrouded in black flames, he asked how this was possible. The black flames dealt him damage based on his attack power multiplied by 150%. The black flames enveloped Black Hunt and Squirrel. The dialogue box says, dealt burst magic damage. 7 people have been one-shot. The mage sigil on Ling Xi's forehead began to fade, and he said with a smirk that their score was settled. Ruko shouted to Ling Xi about how very cool he was. He asked what that skill was because he had never seen him use it. Tilly said that this fire was on par with her flame. Ling Xi told them that he would tell them later. He told them to prepare the equipment he gave them earlier. Ruko grabbed the grappling hook. The dialogue box says, disposable short-distance paraglider has been equipped. Disposable grappling hook has been equipped. Ling Xi said that it would be a while before Squirrel was revived. He told them to coordinate with Tiana and attack from the outside. They shouted that they were ready. Ling Xi told them to follow him. He said they would go around the cliffs and land at the Wolf's Fang Station checkpoint. After pushing off from the ground, they began to soar through the air. The main character called out to capture all of their checkpoint station. Initially, from Wolf's Fang's perspective, with Vice Guildmaster Squirrel's line of defense, any plan Nebulous could come up with would automatically collapse in front of his might. However, not a single person in Wolf's Fang could have predicted the appearance of an unpredictable factor like Ling Xi, a person who would be able to completely disrupt Wolf Fang's rhythm and launch a pincer attack to break through Wolf Fang's defense line. In the considerable time it took Squirrel to revive, the Nebulous members, led by Ling Xi and Tiana, invaded and captured all 3 checkpoint stations with incredible speed. Ruko stands on a crate with a red flag in his hands. Finally facing an attack they had no chance of withstanding, Squirrel could only resentfully retreat and give up the rights to the dungeon. Nebulous successfully captured the remaining checkpoint of Wolf's Fang Guild Station. This battle for the rights to a small dungeon that both of the participants had been planning for a long time was finally over. Nebulous meeting lobby. Coco Lai told Stillwaters that the battle for the rights to the guild-owned dungeon was finally over. Stillwaters, looking out the window, asked what the result was. She said it was just as he predicted. She said it was a victory. Stillwaters turned around with a slight smile on his face. Coco Lai said with a smile that Ling Xi had executed the plan perfectly, and under Tiana's leadership, Nebulous had successfully captured all the checkpoint stations. Stillwaters said to pass on his orders. Coco Lai opened her eyes in surprise. Stillwaters said with a smirk that the entire guild is to go receive Ling Xi and the rest. Nebulous main gate portal. A crowd of people were greeting Ling Xi and his team. Confetti was falling in the sky. Tiana walked down the street with a smile. Coco Lai outside the window said that Tiana seemed to have become much more confident than before. Stillwaters told her to go first and distribute the awards to Tiana and the others who brought them this victory. He said he wanted to talk to Ling Xi in person. The door opened and Stillwaters asked to come in. Ling Xi appeared in the doorway. Stillwaters praised him for his work in completing the task. Ling Xi looked at him calmly. Stillwaters said that Wolf's Fang would probably have a hard time accepting this. The protagonist, grinning, said that he didn't know about Wolf's Fang, but he knew that Squirrel didn't want to accept the truth. Stillwaters, sitting down in his chair, said he was curious to know something. Looking at the protagonist, he asked what exactly he wanted to accomplish. Ling Xi, noticing his gaze, thought that he wanted him to put their statuses aside and give him an honest answer. Frowning, he said that he wanted to get to a point where no matter what angle one looked from, he was the unrivaled number one. Stillwaters thought that even though he knew he wanted to reach the top, he still couldn't help but be struck by his aura. He thought that this is the attitude he is hoping for. Folding his hands, he said that if that was the case, he could help him become unequivocal number one. He asked if he liked that thought. Ling Xi surprisingly said that it was a bit sudden. With a smirk, Stillwaters asked why. He asked if he lacked confidence or if he doubted his abilities. Ling Xi noticed his aura in surprise. Frowning, he thought that he was always calm during their interactions, and because of that, he almost forgot that the person in front of him, Stillwaters, was one of the 5 greatest clerics in his past life. Stillwaters sat in front of him with his leg folded over his leg. Ling Xi said, his eyes starting to hurt. Smiling, Stillwaters apologized and said he added some glowing special effects. The protagonist, raising his hand, said he was honored, and putting aside his confidence in him, he knows his limits, and with his current abilities he's too far from what he needs. Ling Xi said Heavenland is a new frontier with endless possibilities, and there are still plenty of lurking professionals. Stillwaters said it's not a problem and he can wait for it. He added that he hopes he won't dawdle, and he'll wait for the moment when he can confidently stand in front of him and say he's ready. Stillwaters smirked. Ling Xi glanced at him, walking away. He thought that even after he left the meeting room, it still seemed unrealistic to him, and he didn't expect Stillwaters to have such high expectations for him. He speculated that perhaps he was taking a costly gamble on him. The protagonist took off his gaming helmet. Sitting on the bed, he thought that he had gained 1 level from this guild-owned dungeon. Ling Si thought as he gained level 33, he had fallen out of the top 10 of level leaderboard in this short period of time. Closing his eyes, he thought that the level leaderboard was indeed really competitive, and he remembered that the highest level attained so far was level 45. He thought that he had gotten a clear understanding of his weakness after the battle with Squirrel. Putting his foot down on the floor, he remembered Vankaf's face and thought that he needed to replace all his pre-promotion skills, and on top of that, besides the dagger that could evolve, all his equipment was no longer enough. Looking at his hand, Ling Si thought that the Vankaf's potion shop should do extensive recruitment, and on top of that, he should find time to investigate what this mysterious badge of the Glorious was. He figured he had a lot of things to do, and he didn't have time to relax. The protagonist looked at the note from the old man, on which he wrote about going out to get groceries and reminded him to go to school after breakfast. Smiling, Ling Si thought that although it was exhausting, it wasn't a bad thing. He thought that whether it was a game or real life, he had never felt so fulfilled. Ling Si walks past some high school students talking about their own things. A guy asks another guy if he saw the episode last night. The other guy, catching up with someone, yelled for him to wait. Noticing the voice, Ling Si glanced to the side. The voice asked where his apology was for crashing into him. Tang Qi stood in front of the guy lying on the ground with his arms folded on his chest. The guy said he didn't do it on purpose and he was just wiping his glasses and that's why he didn't see him. Tang Qi said that he should know about the fact that he didn't care about it. He punched the guy in the face and his glasses fell off. Tang Qi said it was the first time they met, so he will say straight up. He said he hurt him, so he has to pay. The guy crawling on the ground asked to let him pick up his glasses first. He said with a worried face that his mother had bought them for him not long ago. Tang Qi, hearing that they were new, maliciously smirked. Swearing, he swung his foot and shouted that he was talking to him. He asked why he was still talking about his glasses. With a forceful stomp of his foot, he smashed the glasses lying on the pavement. The guy touched the shards from his glasses with a trembling hand. The guy behind Tang Qi, who was laughing angrily, noticed Ling Si. He tried to call out to Tang Qi. Ling Si swung his hand and told him not to block his way. He swung his hand. The guys ended up on the ground. One guy asked what he had just done. The other shouted to Tang Qi that it was Ling Si, the exchange student. Tang Qi reprimanded and the guy put his hand on his shoulder and said that people were watching and they better leave because they couldn't lose to him here. As he ran away, he yelled that he would pay for it. Ling Si asked the guy if he was okay. He replied that his mother worked hard to buy him those glasses. Ling Si held out 3 purses to him and told him to take them. The guy exclaimed in surprise that they were 3 purses. The protagonist told him with a smile that it was 3 that accidentally dropped them, and the money inside should be enough to buy him a new pair of glasses. The guy hesitantly said that he didn't have to. Ling Si told him that he should. A voice from behind caught Ling Si's attention, and he turned around in surprise. Adolf, taking off his hat, asked him if he was awakened. The guy said he was cool, getting to his feet. Adolf told him he had to hurry or he would be late. The guy smiled awkwardly and caught himself. Ling Si told him with a smile not to worry either, that they would surely come for him in the future. He told him not to make his mother worry and to go buy new glasses. The boy thanked him. Adolf told the protagonist that he was a kind guy. Ling Si asked who he was. Putting his hat on his head, Adolf told him not to worry because he would answer all his questions. Looking at the protagonist, he said that he should talk elsewhere. The afternoon sun was shining above the red building. Ling Si, standing next to the seated Adolf, told him to talk because he would risk being late on his first official school day because of talking to him. Adolf pulled out a gun and suddenly shot at the protagonist. The bullet headed in his direction. Ling Si caught the bullet and swung his arm. He frowned while looking at Adolf. Adolf tucked the gun into the inside pocket of his jacket. As the fist approached his face, he told him to wait. The protagonist stopped, and Adolf said it was a test. Ling Si told him to explain himself. Adolf said that it was an extreme plastic bullet made of a very lightweight plastic that wouldn't cause any injuries, although it might hurt a little. Looking at the protagonist, he said that this was the most direct way to figure out if he was talking to a strong awakened or not, while still saving time. He thought it took him a second to catch the bullet he was aiming at his chest with. What kind of speed is that? He thought. Ling Si unclenched his palm with the bullet and asked if he was going to introduce himself. After a bit of silence, he replied that his name was Adolf. Folding his hands on his chest, he said that he was a middleman who recruits awakened into the army. Ling Si, frowning, thought he remembered that in his past life, most of the awakened had actually joined some kind of organization. He thought that, it turns out, it was an army. Adolf said that, simply put, the army needed the power of the awakened, and so they, the mediators, were using aura sensors to find the awakened and invite them to join. The protagonist, grinning nervously, said that he had an interesting way of inviting them. He asked what the benefit to him was in joining the army. Adolf said that if he was looking for status, it was an excellent way. Ling Si thought that he was unfamiliar with a word like status, and this something that was so out of reach was suddenly so easily accessible. Ling Si smirked and said that it was interesting. He asked if he had passed the test. Adolf, interrupting him, replied that of course not. Fixing his hat, he said that what he meant was that he had only passed his preliminary screening, and that simply confirmed that he was the awakened one he was looking for. He added that he would still have to go through the official army screening. Ling Si asked when it would take place. Adolf, interrupting him again, said with a smirk that it would happen today, and more specifically in an hour. Ling Si exclaimed in surprise and said that he didn't think not showing up on his first day of school was a good idea. Adolf told him not to worry because they would take care of it. Ling Si closed one eye and said he will remember his words and he will file a complaint against him if something goes wrong. Adolf said that he had already prepared the helicopter. The protagonist exclaimed in surprise. There was a helicopter hovering above the octagon-shaped building in the sky. Ling Si thought that as he expected from the army, they have an incredible scale and imposing style. A voice said to someone that they were all waiting just for him, and could he not hurry up? Looking around, Ling Si wondered if all the people in line were also awakened. A guy with red hair and beard looked at the main character. The man in a cap behind the glass told Adolf that this time they had all 5 candidates to investigate. He said his last-minute request to accept an additional candidate was not part of the regulations. A 3rd Ground Force General, the Western District's awakened supervising examiner, added that he said he would give them a surprise. He offered to see if it could really surprise them. Adolf told him he would not disappoint them. The 3rd General asked if this guy could match that guy with a 54% chance of awakening. He said this guy is the most standout of them all. He looked at the guy with red hair standing in line in front of Ling Si. The 3rd General asked if he had measured the awakening chance of the guy who had just joined. Adolf said that since he found him at the last minute, he hadn't measured his exact awakening chance yet, so he just brought him here directly for them to check him out. The 3rd General replied that they would wait and see. There were 6 people standing in line. In front was a pale guy with a spiked collar around his neck with a 12% chance of awakening at the first dimension. Behind him was a guy in a blue cap and white hoodie with an 18% chance of waking up. To the side of him stood a girl with red hair with a 39% chance of waking up. Behind the guy in the blue cap was a guy with black hair and a white shirt with a 27% chance of waking up. Behind them was a big guy with red hair with a 54% chance of waking up. Ling Si was standing behind all of them. He was missing the record of the chance of awakening at the first measurement. The man on the screen announced that an official examination was about to take place. He said that it would be something known as a 1 versus many battle, and the final result determined the attitude with which they would be treated. Ling Si asked if they were going to measure their chance of awakening with a battle royal. The guy in front of him, grinning, told him that he was overthinking it, and before they made sure they had that chance of awakening that they needed, they meant nothing to the army. The guy, smirking, said they wanted their individual combat stats. He said that if he wasn't confident in himself, now was his chance for a chance to get out. The voice announced that their battlefield was ready. He said that an elite anti-supernatural ground army would be waiting for them. In front of them were many people dressed in dark exoskeletons. The voice said that the elite anti-supernatural ground army was the strongest army in their arsenal at the moment. He said that they are the strongest soldiers that remain in formation even after countless of the most brutal battles. He said they once took a city from the control of 3,000 terrorists with a team of 100 men. The voice said that, before the special existence of the evolved awakened ones, they were by far the strongest human beings, and now one day the strongest human army and the awakened ones with superpowers would determine who was the strongest through battle. He called for the beginning. The eyes of the man in the exoskeleton glowed blue. The voice announced that now, according to the order in which they were lined up, they needed to go out one by one to fight the 15 anti-supernatural soldiers. The guy with red hair said that this exam seemed to be interesting. The voice announced that they would gather the necessary data based on their individual performance and estimate their current combat awakening rate. The voice asked number 1 to get ready. The guy in the collar stepped forward with his hand in his pants pocket. Frowning, he thought about the fact that fighting against 15 of these people would be problematic. The gate behind them closed. A voice announced the beginning of the examination. The guy in the collar went towards the soldiers and, waving his hands, told them to attack. He said that he didn't believe that as an awakened, he had anything to fear from so-called elite soldiers like them. The 3rd General said that underestimating elite soldiers who had been in all sorts of life and death situations was not the smartest move. They watched him through the blue screens. Number 1 pushed himself off the ground and jumped to attack the soldier, swinging his fist. A blue shield appeared on the soldier's arm, and the blow pushed him back. Number 1 was surprised to think that it didn't work. The soldier looked at him with glowing blue eyes. The guy thought that his attacks must pierce steel. 2 soldiers rushed at him to attack him from behind. From their impact, the guy flew up in the air, falling to the floor. Blood spurted from his mouth. A voice announced that the outcome was clear. The guy was lying on the ground. The guy in the blue cap said that it was these anti-supernatural soldiers' incredible fighting strength. The man in the suit sitting behind the instruments told the general that the awakening rate on the first measurement of candidate number 1 was 12%. He said that this study determined that his actual combat awakening rate was 6%. The general said there was no need to report those results. He said to continue with the exam. Adolf thought that, just like the general said, most awakened in reality had only reached the level of bullies. He thought that they might behave tough on the outside, but once they were up against soldiers with incredibly strong fighting abilities, they had no chance of winning. Frowning, he thought that this wasn't the type of awakened that the army needed. After that, candidate number 2, number 3, and number 4 were also defeated by the coordinated attacks of the anti-supernatural soldiers. Only candidate number 3, with an awakening rate at the first measurement of 39%, was able to scrape by with an actual combat awakening rate of 33%. The girl with red hair stood there covered in abrasions. A voice told awakened candidate number 5 to get ready. The guy with red hair kneaded his fists and said that his turn had finally come. He said these 4 pieces of trash in front of him had done nothing but waste his time. The general said it finally came through numbers 5. He said he had heard that among this batch of candidates, he was the one to watch. The man behind him said that is true and number 5 has an awakening rate at first measurement of 54% and he is a rare talent. He added that according to him, he is an experienced brawler. A flame appeared in number 5's hand, and he asked with a smirk, how about attacking him altogether? His body was enveloped in flames. He stomped his foot with force. He used a combat power pull, drawing his opponents towards him. Ling Si noticed with a smirk that he was using his skills from the game in real life. He thought that he should learn about it too. The general said that he wasn't bad, and he was different from the previous candidates who only used their strength. He said he seemed to have had time to awaken his gaming skills. The man said that his current awakening rate instantly jumped to 42% and is still rising. Number 5, laughing, raised his hand up in the air with a flame and said that he would show them what a true awakened was. Using Great Axe Double Strike, he hit the soldiers with a sweep of yellow energy. The soldier put his arm out in front of him and ordered him to cover and fall back. Examination bullets, similar to the extreme plastic bullets, they can inflict injuries, but no mortal wounds. Number 5, smiling, said that he was a warrior and he could shield. Using total counterattack shield, he thrust his arm forward and an orange magic barrier appeared in front of him. He said counterattack. The bullets that hit his barrier headed in the opposite direction. The soldiers' orders were to dodge as the bullets rained down on them. Number 5 stood, shrouded in flames, in front of a huge cloud of dust. Smirking, he exhaled and said that they wouldn't be able to get a decisive outcome in such a short time. The general watched through the screen as number 5 offered a draw. The man said about his actual combat awakening rate going up to 52%, and it equaled his awakening rate at the first measurement. The general suggested ending it there because that kind of performance is more than enough for him to pass. A voice from the dialogue box told him that he had passed the exam. It asked him to go to the rest area. Number 5, grinning, said that was the expected result. The voice asked awakened candidate number 6 to get ready. Number 5, passing by Ling Si, told him not to embarrass them, the awakened. The protagonist remained silent. Frowning, he thought that he hadn't yet realized how best to use the powers he had gained as an awakened. He wondered just now, as number 5 used his skills, if he hadn't synchronized his mental state with his physical form. Stepping forward, he wondered if this was what one had to do to synchronize with one's mind. Ling Si raised his fist with his eyes closed, enveloped in purple energy. Opening his eyes, he thought that it wasn't difficult. The outline of a dagger appeared in his hand. The general asked in surprise as he summoned his gaming gear. The man behind the devices said about if he wasn't dreaming, his awakening rate instantly jumped to 100%. Ling Si transformed into his in-game character with his in-game equipment. He glanced forward with a smirk. A voice ordered both parties to get ready. He announced that the examination would begin now. Ling Si, standing in front of the soldiers, told them to hurry up because he still had a chance to make it back to school in the afternoon. The man behind the instruments exclaimed that his awakening rate had already reached 100% at the moment. Adolf said to let him watch. He thought in surprise that it was terrifying that he could believe that his awakening rate had reached 100% to begin with. Adolf thought that he had only heard of people with awakening rates of around 90% appearing in other areas, and he thought that this was already something extraordinary. He thought that he couldn't imagine that a perfect awakened could actually exist. The general said that he thought the perfect awakened existed solely in theory. Folding his hands in his lap, he said that it was indeed possible, and they should hold on to that person at all costs. The general, looking at Ling Si on the screen, said that they should give him whatever he wanted, and he should hold him back. Number 5. Stammering, asked in surprise if he had heard correctly that he was the perfect awakened one. He asked who he thought he had just spoken to. Ling Si, thrusting his dagger forward, said that it felt pretty good, and all he had to do was visualize his in-game state and it would appear on its own. He said that now there was no difference between him in game and in real life. The soldier asked his captain if they would be making their first move. The captain thought about the fact that they had been to all sorts of battles and met all sorts of vicious and brutal opponents. The captain's eye was glowing blue, and he thought that he had never encountered anything like this uncontrollable fear that he was feeling right now, looking at this young man. Looking at Ling Si, he thought that even if they were the strongest people, it was possible for them to defeat such an awakened power. The protagonist, frowning, said as he started. As he approached his opponents, he used rapid shadow thrust and throat slasher, flying through the enemy ranks, leaving behind a swirl of blue energy. He said with a smirk that they all fought well. A voice announced that the battle was over after one hit with a combined skill. The general, looking at the screen, exclaimed in surprise that he had won with one strike. He said that it was a single flash. He exclaimed that this was how an awakened one should be. Smiling nervously, the general ordered the results to be announced. He said he had to greet him personally. The general thought that with someone like him on their side, even if the day of prophecy comes, there is still hope for humanity. A voice announced that the battle was over and candidate number 6 had passed the examination. Military VIP lounge. Adjusting his hat on his head, Adolf told Ling Si that he would say it this way. He told him that if he wants to work together with the army, they promise him that they will give him a position and remuneration that matches his performance. Ling Si asked if there was anything he had to do if he wanted to work with them. The voice told him that he doesn't need to do anything yet. Ling Si smiled slightly. Adolf saluted the general. Ling Si asked if he should salute. The general smilingly told Ling Si that he didn't need to be so formal because he was a treasure of their district. Ling Si, raising an eyebrow, said that it sounded strange. The general, raising his palm, said that he was the 3rd general of the ground forces as well as the West District's supervising examiner, and Ling Si's performance really impressed them. The protagonist asked in surprise if this meant that he had passed, what was next, and what was the situation now. He said that there was no such thing as a free lunch and he wasn't going to do anything that would be at a loss to him. The general told him that, just as he said, he didn't have to do anything yet. He said that he passed the examination, which means that he meets their recruitment requirements, and they will provide him with everything he needs in daily life in exchange for his cooperation in the future. Ling Si, frowning, asked what kind of cooperation. The general, frowning, told him that he might not know it, but there are more and more awakened ones now, and although many want to join the army, most of them don't want to. He said that there are some antisocial awakened who are using their powers for evil to commit all sorts of crime and destruction. The general said that he fears that there will only be more such awakened ones. Ling Si, frowning, asked about wanting them awakened to help them deal with these awakened criminals. The general replied with a smile that was correct, and it was always a pleasure to talk to smart people. He thought that once the prophecy comes to pass, things won't be that easy, and all they are doing now is preparing for the future. The general asked Ling Si what he thought. Ling Si, after thinking about it, replied that he was fine with everything. He said that his place is quite small and there is no room to turn around. The protagonist said with a smirk that he had also heard that there was a new gaming helmet. Trying to remember what it was called, he guessed it was called the gaming cabin. Satisfied with his guess, Ling Si said that he had heard that it was quite good. The general, laughing, said he understood him and they would not force him to work for free and he could take it as a sign of their sincerity. He told Adolf that he would leave it to him. He told him to provide Ling Si with new housing and the newest gaming cabin. Adolf said he understood. The general, as he left, said he looked forward to their next meeting. He said to tell Adolf if he needed anything. The general told Adolf that he would be in charge of communications with Ling Si from now on. Adolf told the protagonist that he would prepare everything he asked for as soon as possible. He asked to start by letting him take him back. The helicopter flew in the sky. Ling Si stepped out of the helicopter that landed. The protagonist frowned and thought that it was getting late and school was surely over by now. He thought that he wanted to experience the joys of school life, and apparently he would have to save that for next time. Ling Si thought that it looked like he would finally be able to provide the old man with a new place to live. He thought that the old man would probably be happy for a bigger place. A dialogue box welcomed him to Heavenland. Ling Si, standing in front of the tall castle, thought that now that this game was affecting his status in real life, it was time for him to strengthen himself. A dagger appeared in his hand, and he thought that he needed to keep evolving this dagger, improve his equipment, and keep raising his level. Coming out of the portal, he found himself in the Casfado Magical Origin Institute. He thought that the most important thing was to turn his unique dual-class spell thief into an invincible existence as soon as possible. Looking at Ling Si walking up the stairs, the guy asked if this guy was a magical soar. He asked about whether Magical Origin Institute wasn't exclusive to mages. The other guy replied that judging from his equipment, He didn't look like a mage. He assumed that he was here on a special mission. Ling Si saw a man in gray clothes in front of him who was talking about how he would have no problem taking the top spot in the Institute's mission rankings today. He told the people around him to just follow him. This guy's name is Soren, he's level 30, and he's a luminous mage. There were several girls standing around him. The girl with the white magic hat said that they would rely on him then. She said that if they could hold the first place, they could exchange points for advanced spells, all thanks to him. Soren said with a chuckle that it was nothing. He said that he had told them many times that as long as he was here, no one would be able to get more points than them. The dialogue box showed 5 stars. Soren asked if they had noticed that they were the only ones who dared to accept the 5-star assignments, which were the most difficult. A voice from behind apologized, and Soren turned around. Ling Si pressed the accept button on the interface. A dialogue box informed him that he had accepted the 5-star assignment. It asked him to wait for the assignment to load. Soren and the girl looked at Ling Si entering the portal. He turned around, and Soren exclaimed in surprise that he had taken the 5-star assignment alone. Soren looked at the protagonist in shock. The girl beside him, noticing Ling Si's clothes, asked in surprise if it was a thief. Ling Si stood in front of them with his hands folded in his pockets. Someone said that he hadn't noticed and he was indeed dressed as a thief. The girl asked about whether mages weren't the only ones allowed to enter the Magical Origin Institute. Soren, with a nervously raised eyebrow, said that he was just trying to pretend to be mysterious. He said that he was probably a mage that no one wanted to team up with, so he decided to wear a costume to draw attention to himself. Pointing his finger at Ling Si, Soren asked if they noticed that he even withheld his information. He said it was because he was afraid of being exposed. He said he has seen a lot of people like that, and Heavenland is lacking in many respects, but there are always a lot of fools like that. Laughing, he said he had seen a lot of such fools. The girl beside him, folding her arms, said she understood. Soren asked who he was trying to scare by taking the most difficult 5-star task alone. Ling Si raised an eyebrow as he exhaled and thought about how it was exhausting him. He thought about why there were so many people like this everywhere in this game. With a glance back, he turned around. Soren asked what he was looking at. Frowning, he asked what he wanted. He said he would call for help if he got closer. Ling Si asked him how much money he had with him. He asked how much his equipment and gear cost together. Soren asked what he cared about. The protagonist said he wanted to make a bet. He said he heard everything he said about him earlier and he is very displeased. Soren asked what kind of bet. Ling Si said with a smile that if he couldn't get the top spot on the mission ranking board today, he would pay him 10 times his current net worth. With a smirk, he said that if he could rank first, he would just have to give him everything he had. He asked if that was okay with him. He added that it was fair. A man in the crowd exclaimed that he was giving away money for nothing. Soren asked if he was serious. A person in the crowd asked someone if they heard what he said. Another man in the crowd said he wanted to make a bet instead if this mage didn't have the courage. Soren, smirking nervously, said he was not afraid. He said he is challenging him to sign an e-gamble agreement with him, and then the system will be their judge. Ling Si, smiling, said that with the e-gamble agreement, the system will forcefully force the execution of the result no matter what. He said he was fine with that. Soren said he would sign first. A blue pen appeared in his hand, and Ling Si held out his hand. Soren grinned evilly, wondering if this guy was a brainless rich kid. He thought that there was no need to put on such a show even if you were rich. He figured today was his lucky day. Soren said that he was done and now it was his turn. Ling Si, smiling wickedly, said he wasn't going anywhere and he was very happy to sign it. Soren wondered why goosebumps ran down his back. Ranking board mission in progress. 5-star mission. The price of the 3 elements. On each side of the lake, which was divided into 3 parts, stands an NPC mage, each dressed in a different colored robe. The 3 mage girls were dressed in red, yellow, and blue robes. The dialogue box says, the price of the 3 elements mission, the elemental mages guarding the elemental lake have fallen into a deep slumber. Seize their elemental crystals to obtain their unique spells. Any player who approaches the lake will startle them from their slumber and earn their fury. After 24 minutes have passed, teams holding onto at least 1 elemental crystal will be rewarded with the corresponding elemental spell, as well as the mission points of this 5-star mission. 3 crystals of yellow, red, and blue were surrounded by electricity. A dialogue box announced that time starts now. The lake, divided into 3 parts, was surrounded by purple electricity. Ling Si stood among the rocks. Bouncing off the rocks, he thought that according to what he had found out, on this mission of Magical Institute, one could obtain incredibly strong elemental spells. Frowning, he thought he was sure that no one in this life had yet found out that there was a hidden reward in this mission. Hanging on a branch over a portion of the lava-covered lake, the protagonist thought that if someone were to possess all 3 crystals when the countdown was complete, would not only be rewarded with 3 elemental spells, but would also receive an additional powerful spell. Swinging around while holding onto a tree branch, Ling Si thought that they had come just for these spells. The mage, pointing his finger forward, ordered to follow him and listen carefully because he had done this before with many different commands. Standing on a giant piece of paper with a yellow magic seal, he said they would focus on getting just one of the crystals. He said not to even think about the other two because getting all 3 crystals was impossible. A huge yellow lightning bolt flashed in front of them and he said someone had already activated the defense spells. A mage in red robes held a staff shrouded in flames. The mage shouted about the guardian golems coming. A huge golem began to rise from the lava. A magma golem, a thunder golem, and a steam golem appeared in front of them. Soren told them to remember to pay attention to the other players once they get the crystal. He said that the chances of them trying to steal the crystal from them were low, but it was better to be on guard. The mage on the staff asked why it was unlikely. He replied that it was because once they got the elemental crystal, they would get the elemental crystal's protection. Smirking, Soren said that he had gotten the elemental crystal 3 times, and it was really cool to be protected by the guardian golems. He told them to remember to support him while he was taking damage. He said that once they defeat these golems, it will remain to be seen who can defeat the elemental mage first. Soren said he was very confident about getting the crystal. The mage with green hair obeyed. The magma golem in front of them swung its hand. Soren grinned and thought that this mission was already in his pocket, and once he successfully completed this first 5-star mission, he wouldn't have to worry about the missions after that. He thought that he needed to get the top spot on the mission ranking board today, and he should win the bet with this brainless guy. Langxi flew over his head and told them to move over. The mage exclaimed that this costumed mage. Standing up on the green-haired mage staff, the main character said that he would go forward. Smirking, he told them not to forget about their bet. He jumped forward from her staff. Langxi used the backstab and once behind the golem's back, he said that thanks to them, he was at a distance where he could use the backstab. He used a minion of the mercenary and 3 spectral warriors appeared around him. Soren, looking surprised at his movements, asked if he was a mage or a thief. While the spectral warriors were fighting the golem, Langxi jumped towards the red-clothed mage. With a smirk, he said that he would take the first elemental crystal.